Irish guy, and I was wrong about Gareth Southgate. This is my apology to all of you because I was fooled. I thought this man had surprisingly done a great job as England manager. Let's be real, okay? My expectations for this man was so incredibly low. I was almost impressed that he managed to make it through a press conference without choking on his tongue. Don't get it twisted. This is someone whose only experience of club football was taking over a Middlesbrough team who had just reached a Europa League final, and within 3 years, he'd managed to get them relegated. That was it. Seeing the England FA desperately offer him the job after the Sam Allardyce mess, this looked like when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would laughably take the reins at Old Trafford. I mean, the England manager is somebody who should exude confidence and charisma. Southgate looks like your mild-mannered postman who always has to beg his wife for forgiveness for minor infractions like failing to laugh at the jokes in Grey's Anatomy. I remember a huge name being linked with the England job at the time. That was Arsene Wenger, who would have been fantastic, but he was never going to quit Arsenal in 2016, despite the fact that his own fans were speaking about him as if he was some horrible vampire who'd eventually eat their entire family. No, the English FA did not have a clue because Gary Neville has admitted that Dan Ashworth told him that if the Valencia job went well, then he would be in pole position to be the next England manager. Gary Neville. Imagine if he did fluke a decent 6 months in La Liga. I mean, it's happened before with interim managers get a new bounce for no other reason than they're just a fresh face in the building. I mean, Craig Shakespeare was a huge success at Leicester City as an interim boss. So was Ollie at Manchester United, and even Tim Sherwood at Spurs. Avram Grant nearly won the Champions League with Chelsea. Roberto Di Matteo did. Imagine if Neville had fluked a quality 6 months and became the England boss, when we all know now that he's got the managerial IQ of a slice of brown bread. I mean, he is somebody who was complaining on the overlap that being sat in the dugout, being eye level with the pitch, all he could see was legs. That is who Ashworth was tempted to hire back in the Christmas of 2015. I mean, forget about looking sick after his Valencia failure. I mean, chuck the stresses and pressures of England management on his back. He'd very quickly look like if you sucked out his soul. Yeah, lads, if that had gone through, the manager of both the men and women's team in England would be Gary and Phil, G-Nev and P-Nev. The Nevs. I mean, some might say it was written in the stars though, because those brothers, their biggest ever England manager was Sven. What's Sven written backwards, everyone? Exactly. Southgate was a similar harebrained risk. He even said 2 months before he took the job that he didn't want the job. Even he didn't believe in himself. Right now, he's been linked with the Manchester United job. Of course he is, because it doesn't matter if you are perceived to be an England failure. It is still England. Sven-Göran Eriksson, someone who I will defend in this video, but people have spoken about him as if he was an England failure. Yeah, I still remember him having secret meetings with newly rich Chelsea in 2003. He was actually their first choice instead of Jose Mourinho. I mean, England lost at Iceland in Euro 2016 in their most embarrassing ever tournament exit, and yet Roy Hodgson was apparently still being offered an £8 million a year job in the Chinese Super League. That would be more than double what he was earning with England. He'd have been rewarded for losing to a bunch of Vikings and dentists, a group of players who looked like they should have been following Jon Snow in the mountains. He would have been rewarded for that failure by becoming one of the best paid managers in the world. I mean, Steve McLaren didn't even get England to Euro 2008, their greatest ever shame, and yet he was still being given the Wolfsburg job just 1 year after they had miraculously lifted the Bundesliga title. Yeah, that's like Southgate being given the Bayer Leverkusen job in May of next year. What? I mean, can you imagine what sort of job Southgate would have now if Sam Allardyce had not ruined his life in 2016? My guess, someone like Peterborough in League One. I thought Southgate would be a complete and utter flop. So on paper, a World Cup semi-final, a Euro 2020 final, and a World Cup quarter-final. I didn't know what everybody was moaning about. But now, after that absolute snooze fest against Denmark, where the blow clearly still is the absence of Calvin Phillips on his brain, oh dear. He was literally speaking in his post-match interview about how he's having to do a Trent experiment in midfield because
we don't have a replacement for Calvin Phillips.
How must Phillips feel listening to that? Because he's not dead. The next England manager cannot be English. They just can't, because there is only one English manager who would actually be good enough for the role, and anyhow is not leaving club football now. It'll be Graham Potter, I know it will, and he is just another Southgate. He even looks like him. Two blokes who look like reflections in the back of a spoon. These guys look like something a child would laugh at whilst eating a spoonful of Special K. Lads, what happened to the days of the English FA flexing their financial muscle and attracting massive names? I compare England to the Ireland FA because we've been in parallel situations. I mean, back in 2007, both nations went big and ambitious, appointing huge, powerful names in Italian football. You got Fabio Capello, we got Giovanni Trapattoni, two absolute winning machines, who between them Bellingham had lifted 14 Serie A titles, 3 La Liga titles, a Bundesliga title, a Primera Liga title, an Austrian Bundesliga title, 2 Champions Leagues, a Europa League, and a bunch of other domestic trophies. But nowadays, both nations are coached by just ex-centre-backs who played in the northeast of England for Middlesbrough and Sunderland. Come on, the England FA were so close to appointing Jose Mourinho when he was at the peak of his powers. Just 3 years before he won an historic treble with Inter Milan. Yeah, less than 10 years after that job interview with Jose, you were interviewing Steve Bruce of Hull. Where has that ambition gone? Go out there and get your dream appointment. The man who crushed your hearts at Euro 2004, go and get Zinedine Zidane. Get David Beckham on the phone to that man, because you need a guy that suits tournament football. That is Zizou more than anybody else. Right, he won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Can you imagine the aura this man would bring? Jude Bellingham actually learning underneath the guy whose legendary shirt number he took at Real Madrid. I'm telling you, Zidane is a man who is used to working with world stars. That comes as second nature to him. Southgate, he looks like somebody who would probably cry if Harry Kane rejected his hug. This is someone who'd probably burst into tears if Declan Rice deleted him on Facebook. Because Southgate, you just know, he was never in the cool club at school. But Zidane, he is somebody who ruthlessly threw away a megastar like Gareth Bale because he liked golf. This is a man who makes the seriously tough decisions. Now look, maybe he doesn't want the job, but give him £10 million a year. I mean, Southgate is on just under 5. Double it for Zidane. I don't care what you have to do. Make some cutbacks around the office. If that means that lower league clubs have to die, then so be it. That's not a popular one. Okay, no, forget that. No, if it means that the stuffy old men in the FA boardroom suddenly have to buy their own lunch from the Burger King across the road, then so be it. If that means that the England team have to introduce a swear jar to produce some extra pennies, then so be it. Trust me, Zidane would be worth it. But if he really is holding out for the France job, then the plan B would be Pochettino. And I know for England fans, it's probably a horrifying thought to have an Argentine manager at the helm, but get over it. Diego Simeone is literally somebody who got David Beckham sent off at the '98 World Cup. And if you're telling me you would not accept him as the next England boss, I can only assume you got Bumblebee sick for brains. I know the FA aren't actually scared of foreign managers, because after Hodgson, they were in talks with Jurgen Klinsmann, the former Germany manager. I mean, come on. People seem to think that the England manager should not be a foreign coach. Yawn. For those who think the England manager should be English. And James Alcott, I think you're one of those. Then I bet the FA are really annoyed that they never actually succeeded in converting Mikel Arteta into being an England international in 2010, because he wanted to do that as well. He was ready to turn his back on Spain and be English, as he was 28 and was being repeatedly ignored. Hold your horses, Mikel. Ayoze Perez just made his Spain debut at 30, and he nearly scored against Italy last night. I never saw that in his future when I annoyed him on a Ryanair flight 7 years ago. But yes, Arteta was prepared to take FIFA to court to allow him to play for England. If he had done that, then technically Arteta would be English and could one day be in line for the England job, right? It would satisfy those British Bruces down the pub, because technically he ticks that English box, right? Right? Lads, Sven-Göran Eriksson is talked about as if he was a complete failure as England boss. No, that is so unfair. People like to lump in the golden generation's failure to get to Euro 2008 as a stick to beat Sven with, because he created that team. No, that was Steve McLaren. Eriksson had nothing to do with that mess. I mean, 2 weeks before Euro 2008, he was in the Premier League, losing 8-1 to Middlesbrough, who were coached by Gareth Southgate. Oh, that's actually a horrible alibi. Lads, if you had frozen time then and there in May 2008, when Southgate delivered such a beatdown on Sven, if you told everyone that this was a battle between England managers past and future, you'd think, yeah, sounds about right. But not the following year, when Southgate was losing a relegation battle against Ricky Spragia and Phil Brown. Honestly, in May 2009, Alan Shearer probably looked like a more realistic future England manager than Southgate. Wake up! Eriksson is a man who's given 2 World Cups and a European Championships with England. In 2002, he took England to a quarter-final of a World Cup where they narrowly lost in extra time to the all-conquering Brazil. And then at Euro 2004, I thought England were great. To me, that is the best England have ever looked at a tournament in my lifetime. I mean, in the group stage, they crushed Switzerland 3-0 and Croatia 4-2. I mean, sure, they lost their opening match to France, but that was a fluke. England were 1-0 up and had been given a second half penalty to make it 2-0, which David Beckham missed, but he had no business taking that pen. Christ, well, he missed 2 crucial penalties in that tournament, but no wonder. He was a Real Madrid megastar at the time, right? Guess what? he never ever took a penalty in Spain. He never even took a penalty for LA Galaxy in the MLS. So why on earth was he trying to score past his former Manchester United teammate Fabian Barthez? It's been look at Hugo Lloris psyched out Harry Kane at the last World Cup because they were club teammates. They were in each other's head. Beckham should have put his ego aside and given that penalty to Frank Lampard, someone who went on to score over 60 pens in his career. England would have won the game 2-0 thanks to a Lampard brace. They would have topped the group and played Greece in the next round. But no, they imploded by letting Zinedine Zidane score twice in the final minute. But that's not on Sven. I mean, was it Otmar Hitzfeld's fault when Bayern Munich conceded 2 in the final minute of a Champions League final against Man United? Was he just some German bottle job with the defensive tactics of a bowl of black and white pudding? No, he'd already lifted the Champions League with Borussia Dortmund 2 years before that and would win it with Bayern 2 years after that. Every single injury time implosion is on the players. And then, yeah, England lost at the quarterfinals to a quality Portugal side on their own turf. Is there any shame in that? No, Portugal were a very good team. Their entire midfield three of Maniche, Deco and Costinha had just won the Champions League with Porto the previous month. I mean, they're two wingers. Luis Figo was a Galactico, who is the second most expensive footballer of all time at the time, and the other one, I mean, if there was no such thing as a Lionel Messi, he would have gone on to win 9 Ballon d'Ors. Look, the 2006 World Cup was definitely a backward step, and the golden generation did look sluggish and tired at that one, but lads, Eriksen had one fit striker that tournament, Peter Crouch. Somebody who the previous year had been relegated with Southampton and had to wait 5 months to score his first Liverpool goal. I mean, if there was social media at the time, that would have been his funeral. I mean, tell Sven after Euro 2004 that he would be picking this beanpole at the next tournament, some gangly robot, and Aston Villa misfit who had just spent that season out on loan to Norwich in the Championship. Oh, he'd probably smash his face off a clock in disbelief. But lads, neither Michael Owen or Wayne Rooney were fit. They'd both been rushed back from injuries. Owen had played 29 minutes of football for Newcastle in 2006. After breaking his foot on New Year's Eve, he was rushed back, limped through less than an hour against Paraguay and Trinidad and Tobago, and then crushed his ACL 4 minutes into the final group game against Sweden. Rooney was rushing back from a broken metatarsal he picked up against Chelsea in April, and even then, the guy has since admitted that he pulled his groin during an England training session and just didn't tell anyone. So is it any wonder that England team couldn't score goals? I mean, yeah, Sven did bring it on himself a little bit by stupidly selecting a raw teenage Theo Walcott, who is yet to make his Arsenal debut. That would be a bit like if Euro 2020 hadn't been moved to 2021. Imagine if Manchester United had been successful in poaching Jude Bellingham from Birmingham City in January. Imagine then that Ollie leaves this teenage talent squirming on the bench for 6 months, and yet Southgate still selects his 17-year-old bench warmer for Euro 2020. It wouldn't have made sense. But even still, England went out in the quarterfinals, sure, but they went on a penalties to a quality Portugal. And I think the fact that even dragged them to a shootout when they had to be playing with 10 men for an hour, isn't that good? Eriksen looks like a failure on paper because that is 3 quarterfinal exits. But it's exits against a world-class Brazil and a brilliant Portugal. Can you imagine if he'd been given as fortunate a run as Southgate? Don't forget, England kept 4 clean sheets in 5 games at that World Cup. Southgate's England couldn't even keep a clean sheet against Panama. Yeah, they were lucky to squeeze past Colombia on penalties in 2018. But imagine if that had gone the other way and England had lost. Southgate would have been grabbed by the ears and flung into a swimming pool filled with monkey piss to then get a quarter-final against Sweden. An old, useless Sweden who didn't even have Zlatan Ibrahimovic anymore. Of course England were going to make the semi-finals, which they then lost to Croatia. I mean, if Sven had been given that run, England would have made the final with ease. Yeah, England made the final at Euro 2020, sure. And beating Germany was quality business. But don't forget, German football was in crisis back then. But as well, that was a team that would then fail to make it out of the group at the next World Cup, to then be given a quarterfinal against Ukraine and a semi-final with Denmark, and then a final against an Italy team who didn't make it to the last World Cup and wouldn't make it to the next one either. Sorry lads, but Sven would have won the whole tournament. Even Fabio Capello, yes, this is somebody who created a horrible, toxic working environment. The England players genuinely speak about that man as if he forced them all to drink a pint of their grandma's sick before every match. Now, all he did was just tell you not to pour ketchup on your chicken nuggets. But even he only had 1 tournament, the 2010 World Cup, and sure, it wasn't great, but don't forget, yes, England technically lost 4-1 to Germany, but if VAR had existed, then Frank Lampard would have made it 2-2 with half an hour left. There would have been a momentum swing, and don't forget, Capello didn't have a goalie. David James was in net that afternoon, someone who was turning 40 the following month, someone who had just finished bottom of the Premier League with Portsmouth, and was 2 weeks away from tying up a move to Bristol City. Yes, Bristol City! And here he was in a World Cup against the Germans, a Germany team who had already stuck 4 past Australia in the opening group match, and would then stick another 4 past Messi's Argentina in the quarter-final. Does nobody have sympathy for Capello? I mean, the other goalkeeper he picked in the tournament in the groups, Rob Green, oh, he'd be finishing bottom of the Premier League the following season. I mean, come on. Foreign managers are nothing to be scared of. I mean, if you want to see a true waste of a golden generation, England are not the worst culprits. Oh no, it's France. After winning the 98 World Cup and then Euro 2000, when Thierry Henry was just 22 years of age, imagine being told that out of the next 4 tournaments, France would finish bottom of their group on 1 point 3 times. Sure, they reached the World Cup final in 2006, but I should think so. Vieira, Henry, Zidane, Ribéry, Malouda, they were favourites for arguably every competition over a 10-year period. France from 2000 until 2014 were mostly a disgrace. If you just delete the 2006 World Cup, pretend that tournament never happened, then after winning Euro 2000, never mind France's next win in the knockout stage of an international tournament, they wouldn't even score a goal in the knockout rounds for 14 years. Until Pogba scored against Nigeria. If Sven had presided over that disgrace, then sure, I can see why people would be scarred. But to me, he did fine. I was wrong about Southgate. I thought England fans choosing to moan about him was silly because he'd actually done a fantastic job. But no, he hasn't. I finally realized that actually it's just complete defensive cowardice. Anyway, that's Stephen. What do you think? Let me know. What do you think? Should you get Zidane? Should you not? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give an extra subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.